Uruguay, our last South American country.
Nope, one more.
Our second to last South American country. In the Latin American world, the stereotype is that Uruguay is just Argentina's Canada or Argentina light. But that's not fair. Uruguay has its own distinct identity, okay? I mean, they drink mate.
Yeah, we do that too. We drink mate.
Yeah, but we do it like a little differently. Like we're more inclined to bring those thermos things in public, whereas you guys don't do that as much. The tango was invented here.
That's debatable.
Okay, yeah, much of it was inspired from the candombe ceremonies that were distinctly from Montevideo, and you don't have that. They invented chivito?
Okay, I'll give you that.
See, now we're getting somewhere, all right.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbs. Get your Geography Now merch like this Geography Now t-shirt that you can get at geographynow.com. Not selling out if it's your brand. Woohoo! Turchin, you like selling out, don't you? You're a sellout. Yes, you are. Look at this little sellout. Enhihua. I had the pleasure of briefly visiting this place with my mom last year, and we met quite a few of you guys, the Uruguayan Geography peeps. We also had an Airbnb, which happened to be placed right in the middle of the super loud and colorful candombe parade, and it looked amazing, but like we didn't realize it kept going on for like 9 more hours, and my mom needed to sleep, and also the place had no AC or fan or Wi-Fi, so we had to ditch the place and get a hotel, but that's another story. In any case, what is Uruguay? Well, that is not a simple question to answer, but at the very least, we can start by locating it on the map, shall we? So technically, you could argue that Uruguay doesn't even have a real name. The official title is the Republic that lies on the oriental or eastern side of the Uruguay River. Uruguay meaning the river of painted birds in the Guarani language. And in colonial times, it was just called the Oriental Province, and all the locals were just called Orientales or Easterners. Inevitably, they were just like, whatever, just call it Uruguay. But in any case, this can all be better explained with the motion graphic. So let's jump into the map. First of all, Uruguay is located in the South American continent, sandwiched between Argentina and Brazil, and is the second smallest country in South America after Suriname. This location makes Uruguay the only country in South America entirely south of the Tropic of Capricorn, and the country with the northernmost point in the world. You would think that title would belong to New Zealand, but no, they still have those Kermadec Islands that lie at 29 degrees latitude south, whereas Uruguay is 30 degrees south. So yeah. In any case, the entire western border is the Uruguay River, which at the tri-point with Argentina, they have a little land dispute with Brazil at the unfortunately named Brazil Island. From there, the border gets a little bit more complicated as it partially follows the Coray River until you get to the corner of Artigas, this triangle-shaped plot of land that is also disputed with Brazil at the confluence of the Coray and Invernada stream, and today Brazil administers most of the corner. In fact, Uruguay and Brazil share quite a few awkwardly split towns along their land borders, most notably in the town of Rivera, where Brazilians like to go to gamble because it's illegal in Brazil. In the south, on the Rio Plata, lies the capital and largest city, Montevideo, where almost half of the entire population lives. Here you can also find the largest and busiest airport, Montevideo's Carrasco International, and the largest port, the port of Montevideo. From there, the second and third largest cities, or towns, however you want to classify them, are Salto and Paysandú in the western border. From Montevideo, all major highways extend like a spiderweb to all regions of Uruguay, the longest being the number 3 national route, or that General Artigas route that goes over 560 kilometers connecting to the entire west side. Also, keep in mind, many houses in Uruguay are not labeled by number, but are registered by name, like Casa de Lopez, and the mailman will just know where to go on the street. Another side note, Uruguay used to have a really extensive rail network. However, over time, roads were more favored, and today only about half of them are operating. So as you can see, Uruguay, like many other South American countries, is located in a sort of buffer region. Long story short...
Hey, okay, I'm gonna help mediate. Treaty of Montevideo. Also, I'm gonna temporarily occupy the city.
And that's why today in Montevideo, you can find a lot of British-style red and beige brick architecture and historical buildings. Yeah, they kind of left their mark. Long story short, this guy, Artigas, was the father of Uruguayan independence. You'll see statues of him everywhere. It's funny because like he technically didn't even want an independent Uruguay. Originally, he just wanted like a unified southern provinces nation, which included parts of what are now Argentina. In any case, since then, it's been quite a roller coaster ride leading up to the Uruguay that we have today. You know, after they dealt with like a military junta after a coup in the 20th century, as well as a dictator that was convicted and sentenced under 37 counts of murder and human rights violations. Things started to level off and cool down after all that stuff, and then yeah. Today now, Uruguay is consistently voted the safest country in South America and second in Latin America after Costa Rica. Hey, Costa Rica! They have one of the highest incomes per capita in Latin America, and along with Chile, they have the strongest passports in South America as well. And technically, Uruguay is one of the only nations on earth to have legal proceedings to deny immigrants any process process of naturalization, so there's that. Nonetheless, the country has an abundance of sights to see if you ever decide to visit, which brings us to the famous places segment. Let me introduce you to Juan. He helped me out so much when me and my mom were in Uruguay. He drove us around and showed us the city, so I promised him he could be in this video, and he's gonna take over the famous places segment. Say hi to Juan.
Hi guys, I'm Juan, and I'm gonna be discussing some of the top places you might want to visit if you happen to come to Uruguay. Firstly, we have 3 UNESCO heritage sites, which include the industrial landscape of Fray Bentos, the historic quarter of Colonia del Sacramento as a whole, and lastly, the church in Atlántida, built by famous Uruguayan architect Eladio Dieste. Focusing on Montevideo, in the old city you can find places like Teatro Solís, the Montevideo Cathedral, and Plaza Independencia. Now, moving to the Cerro de Montevideo, you can find a fortress that overlooks the whole city, and you can get some very nice panoramic views. We have many green areas and parks around the city, but our favorites are El Prado, which has the botanical garden and also a monument to the last charruas, and also Parque Valle, which has the stadium that hosted the first football World Cup in history, that's called the Estadio Centenario. Now, what you cannot miss in Montevideo is the Rambla, and also it's one of the world's longest continuous sidewalks. Now, moving to the Atlantic coast, you can find just too many nice beaches and beach towns, and probably the most famous one, Punta del Este. Now, moving to the interior of the country, you can find the wine region in the department of Canelones, in the northwest of the country, in the departments of Paysandú and Salto, and of course in the heart of the country in Tacuarembó, you can experience the authentic gaucho culture. There's even an annual festival called Patria Gaucha where you can see many gaucho traditions. So that's it guys, I really hope you enjoy your visit if you come to Uruguay. Goodbye.
Fun fact, the buildings along the Rambla are required to be of a certain height so they don't cast a shadow on the walkway. In any case, Uruguay's notable sites extend beyond the man-made structures. Let's discuss that in the next segment, So if you Google landscape of Uruguay, you will most likely come across an image selection like this. But I promise you, there's definitely more that meets the eye to Uruguay. Hoo-hoo, that rhymed. But first, the motion graphic. So Uruguay lies in the area known as the Rio Plata region of South America, which is essentially the lowland estuary where the 2 huge rivers of Paraná and Uruguay dump into the Atlantic Ocean. In that regard, it creates this massive wedge of water between Uruguay and Argentina. People dispute over what exactly this even is. Is it a bay, a marginal mini sea, or is it a river? And if it was a river, it would be considered the widest river in the world with a maximum width of about 140 miles or 220 kilometers. You can even see the part where the river water and its sediments collide with the salty ocean water, clearly distinguishing 2 separate bodies of water, so you be the judge. Off the coast they have a few small islands and islets, the most notable ones being Isla de Flores and Isla de Lobos, which are nature reserves and you can even take a ferry to visit them. Despite being a lowland, there are 2 small parallel hilly ranges found within the country, the Cuchicha de Haedo in the north and the Cuchicha Grande in the south, which holds the highest peak of the country, Cerro Catedral, at 514 meters high. Now, the longest shared river of the country with Uruguay is of course the Uruguay River, making up the entire western border with Argentina. However, in between these 2 small hilly ranges is a valley that holds the longest river fully within Uruguay and splitting the country north to south, the Rio Negro. The river is dammed off at the Paso de los Toros, creating the largest inland body of fresh water fully within the country, the Rincón del Bonete Reservoir. Otherwise, the largest natural inland body of water is the Laguna Negra, only separated from the coast by about 2.5 miles of land, 4.5 kilometers, and the largest shared inland body of water with Brazil is the Lago Mirim. Overall, the rolling hills and valleys are home to a wide network of small rivers and streams that typically feed into larger rivers that all inevitably end up dumping into the Rio Plata. On a weird side note, my Uruguayan subscribers wanted me to mention that one reason Uruguayans say they declared war on the Nazis was partially to avoid paying the Nazis for the dam that they kind of helped build. It's a whole other story. Hey, every country has their skeletons in the closet, I'm just saying. Looking down from the satellite imagery, you'll see that Uruguay is kind of monostructural in its physical makeup, which means we have to kind of microscope the crap out of this country if we're gonna get any extra content to put in this episode. But luckily, I'm not gonna do it. I have my triple shot espresso break, which means Noah is gonna go in and fill in for this segment. Take it away, Mr. Noah.
All right, Geography peeps, let's do this.
You know it's serious when you had the rag.
To generalize, Uruguay is usually one of, if not the highest ranking nation in Latin America in terms of economic stability. Much of this is attributed to the reforms done in the early 20th century by former President Bache. And now Uruguay has the lowest poverty rate in Latin America. To this day, Uruguay is still a heavy export-based economy, mostly in beef and food processing. In fact, cows outnumber people in Uruguay 4 to 1. So yeah, there's a lot. Watch out for the uprising, or shall I say, the movement. Also, fun fact, if you find yourself in a forest, chances are it was planted less than 50 years ago, as the country has undergone a huge reforestation project, and many of the trees are used in their cellulose industry.
What is cellulose, Noah?
Basically, cellulose is the stuff that makes up trees.
Yeah, okay, I got it now.
In a way.
I'm
In a
learning.
way. In any case, aside from the resources, Uruguay is actually quite well known for another field of industry, finance. Thanks to the investment promotion law, Uruguay has quite a few tax incentives that draw in lots of corporate interest, such as a possible 90% corporate income tax exemption, as well as VAT and net wealth worth tax exemptions. Crazy, right? And with some exceptions, they typically do not levy income tax on income earned outside the country. So you can kind of work around with this system.
Hey, where'd you get all that money?
None of your business.
Okay.
The rationale is the country is so small that any extra cash flow would be more macroeconomically beneficial in the long run, as opposed to causing a tax crisis. In addition, the Uruguayan government also established several free trade zones. Companies operating in them are usually exempt from domestic taxes. The only takeaway, they must prove that at least 75% of their staff is Uruguayan. Gotta keep the money domestic, you know. The one issue though, prices in Uruguay are generally more expensive and taxed way higher, as in their VAT is 22%. In any case, with a well-educated workforce and low wages, they have been put on the IT map. Many software enterprises and consulting firms are headquartered in Uruguay. Another more contemporary industry that has been contributing to Uruguay's economy these days, cannabis. Yes, Uruguay became the first country in the world to legalize production, sale, and consumption of cannabis for recreational purposes in 2013. Citizens are allowed to grow up to 6 plants per household. They must be registered and are not allowed to yield more than 480 grams. Needless to say, it's not uncommon to see people growing the plants on their rooftop or courtyards when walking through the city. And it makes sense because they have lots of sunshine. So much that unfortunately Uruguay is also labeled the skin cancer capital of South America. But it also helps with solar power. In fact, over 90% of energy in Uruguay comes from renewable sources, and more than 95% of the country has access to consistent grid electricity. As you can see, there's a lot of interesting and cool things going on in Uruguay. You just have to dig a little deeper into the specifics. And another thing we can dig deeper into would be the wildlife of Uruguay. And this time, Caleb's going to have to step aside because this time we have a special guest. Host of Nat Geo Latin America's Bichero is Mr. Antonio Ripoll.
Hey! What's up, geography peeps of the world? My name is Antonio Ripoll. Noah, Bobs, thank you so much for having me here, and I'm so terribly sorry, Caleb, that I took over. Don't you worry, it'll be just for this video. Bueno, Uruguay. Before we begin, we must address the elephant in the room. Since not only we are the second smallest nation in continental South America, but we have also been dedicating ourselves to intensive cattle farming for literally over 145 years before we even proclaimed our independence. Well, it shouldn't be hardly any surprise at all that we are the second country with the smallest percentage of protected areas in relation to its total surface area at just barely over 1%. But also animals such as the jaguar, the glaucous macaw, and the giant anteater became extinct over 100 years ago. But trust me, there is still more than enough nature left out there to blow you away. As of the moment I'm recording this video, we have a total number of 17 sites classified as protected areas by the National System of Protected Areas, or as we know it by its Spanish acronym, There you go. Even though our country does lie within the Pampas region of South America, there are lots of different corners scattered all over the national territory that adds lots of extra flavor. Wetlands, rocky hills full of ravines and sometimes even valleys. There is one corner of Atlantic forest full of weird and wonderful creatures. This one with flora and fauna more typical of the Chaco area, full of caiman. There is this one which has the largest coastal sand dunes in all of South America. And then there's this one, which is not a protected area yet. But as of the time we are recording this video, this rocky outcrop full of more than 300,000 breeding fur seals and sea lions and its surrounding waters are indeed within the process of becoming our 18th protected area. Yahoo! The total list of recorded wildlife species for Uruguay includes 508 species of birds, somewhere around 500 of fish, 112 of mammals, 71 of reptiles, and 48 of amphibians. Red-crested cardinals, pampas and crab-eating foxes, armadillos, black and white tegus, lesser grisons, capybaras, nutrias, bottlenose dolphins, southern right whales, and of course our national bird, the southern lapwing, are just a few of the most common examples you could get to find almost anywhere within the territory. Lesser anteaters, market cats, coatis, grey brockets, toucans, pampas deer, black-collar monkeys, maned wolves, pumas, the recently discovered Uruguayan pampas cat, and so much more. Of course, I could just keep on rattling on and on about how extraordinary the wildest side of my country is, but unfortunately, my time is up. So, Noah, Bobs, take it away from here. Peace out!
Thanks, Antonio. Yeah, lots of animals. Not just cows, but still, watch out for that movement. Oh, and speaking of which, in 2017, Uruguay hosted the largest barbecue on Earth with over 200 cooks and over 16.5 tons of meat grilled. So much information about food! And to talk about it, let's bring it to one of you guys, the Uruguayan geography peeps. Say hi to Bruno.
Everyone, I'm Bruno and let's discuss the food of Uruguay. So first of all, our dinners can be very late, like sometimes past 11 p.m. Also, you do have to ask for salt at restaurants, not usually at the table. And although we're literally by the ocean, we don't have a big seafood culture unless you're in Rocha or Maldonado. We usually take our mates everywhere, our mate and our thermos. You shouldn't have it at night because you won't be able to sleep. We usually have mate with torta fritas, with bizcochos. We also enjoy tanat wine, and if you want something stronger, maybe you could try grapa miel. A few notable dishes you can find are torta pascualina, comida de olla, guiso, ensopado, cazuelas, buceca. We also have our own version of farinata, which we call faina, and we usually eat it alongside with pizza. For dessert, you might find things like chajar, ricardito, alfajores, arroz con leche. Dulce leche is everywhere and in every single dessert. We love it. And finally, you cannot talk about our food without discussing asado. We're very heavy meat eaters, sorry vegetarians. So we usually eat huge platters of all types of meat and sausages, and you can just pick and choose whatever you like. We cook it slow over wood coals on a parrilla, which is a grill. We have our parrillas in every single household and in restaurants too. And you cannot talk about Uruguayan food without discussing the chivito, our most Uruguayan dish. It consists of a sandwich with lomo, ham, cheese, bacon, fried eggs, lettuce, tomato, and pretty much whatever you want with it. And don't forget the chimichurri. Well, that's all from me, and I hope you get to try some of our dishes if you get the chance. Vamos Uruguay and vamos arriba Peñarol.
Thank you, Bruno.
Yo, Noah, what's your favorite barbecue?
You know, I'm a big fan of some brisket. Gotta love barbecue, I'll tell you that.
Falls off the bone.
All right, well, that's all I got for you, my Jogger peeps. I will catch you on the next one.
Thank you, Noah. God, I love those chivito sandwiches. Okay, so now I hope you kind of get a feel of what makes Uruguay Uruguay, and nothing is more Uruguayan than the Uruguayans. Let's discuss them in the next segment, shall we? Known as the Porteños, what is an Uruguayan? Well, the number one consensus I got when I talked to them was not Argentinian, unless they get in trouble abroad, and then by all means they'll call themselves Argentinians. Or at least that's what I was told. I don't know, Uruguayans, is that correct? I don't know. In any case, let's talk about the ethnic breakup of the country, shall we? Let's go, motion graphic. First of all, the country has about 3.5 million people and is usually ranked number 1 in democracy, peace, and low corruption in Latin America. The country is made up predominantly of peoples that identify with European in origin at somewhere around 88%. However, keep in mind of this group, many of the people may actually be considered mestizo, as in European Amerindian mixed. There is no exact number, but from my research, I've seen everything range from 4 to 8% of a speculation in genetic studies. After that, the black community makes up about 5% of the population. About 2.5 claim to be indigenous, mostly of Charrua or Guarani descent, and the remainder of the population are other groups, mostly East Asian and Middle Eastern. For currency, they use the Uruguayan peso, but also US dollars are sometimes accepted. They use the CFL plug outlets and they drive on the right side of the road. They speak Spanish in Uruguay, however, there are two interesting side notes in regards to the Spanish they speak. For one, they speak with a very distinct Rio Platense accent shared with many parts of Argentina. This threw me off so much when I was trying to speak Spanish when I visited. First of all, it sounds kind of like an Italian Spanish, like they have those inflections and intonations. And second, the most notable characteristic being that they switch the Y and double L sounds into sh. So it's like, hola, me llamo Joseph y ella es Julia. Somos uruguayos. Va adelante de este calle. It's like every time I heard that, it's like I had to like re-spell out the word in my head. Like, what are they saying? Calle, not cache. I had to like do math. I hate math. This is a geography channel, not a math channel. And that's not even math, that's spelling. See, I just do geography. On top of that, they have a bunch of other like mini words that can mean anything. I'm talking about the famous bo and ta words. I can't even explain it. We need an Uruguayan or Uruguayan to explain. So here's Fernando.
Okay, so in Uruguay we use certain words, you know, like ta or bo. You can say ta to say like, ta, you know, like, I understood what you're trying to tell me. Ta, 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 ta. stop bothering me. And then you can use the word bo to say like, bo, Santiago, and you call someone, you know, your friend, tremendo, to say like, it's very good. Like at the end of the word you use the bo. And that's it, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Fernando. Second side note, in many of the northern parts of the country on the border with Brazil, they speak Portuñol, which is like a Creole mix of Portuguese and Spanish. Like they say peixe instead of pescado, ollo instead of ojo. They pronounce the j and ang sounds that are in Portuguese. Like I can't do it. Portuguese is, ooh. Remember what I said in the Portugal episode? In any case, before Uruguay was Spanish speaking, they were inhabited predominantly by the semi-nomadic Charrua peoples in pre-colonial times. Sadly though, in 1831, there was the Sal si puedes, or Get Out If You Can, which was a massacre against the Charruas people, which wiped out most of them. After this incident, it made Uruguay the only country in the Americas without an active indigenous language in usage. However, although the language, customs, and traditions are mostly lost, their legacy still lives on, and today about 150,000 people claim Charrua ancestry. And in 2005, Dr. Cynthia Pagano conducted a genetic study detecting that about 38% of Uruguayans are speculated to have partial genetic influence from the Amerindian population. Mestizos, they're kind of common in Latin America. Nonetheless, over time, especially in the 19th and 20th centuries, large waves of immigrants came in, mostly from Europe, the three largest non-Spanish groups being Italians, French, and Germans. And speaking of which, yes, a little controversial, but it's true, certain countries in South America, including Uruguay, were kind of popular destinations that Nazis escaped to during and after World War II. Some notorious criminals were caught and brought to justice, but otherwise, for the rest of them, they just kind of blended in and changed their names and kept low profiles while starting new lives and families. So it's kind of possible that I'll just let you guys do the math. Again, skeletons in the closet. In any case, religion. Uruguay and Cuba together usually rank as the least religious countries in Latin America. However, it's kind of interesting. According to a survey conducted by the National Institute of Statistics, only about 55% of the country claims to be affiliated with Christianity, mostly Catholic denomination. In any case, this is mostly based off of the secular laws that the country instituted in the 20th century, and it has played a bit in the way how some Uruguayans word things. For example, some Uruguayans may call Christmas Family Day, and they'll call Holy Week Tourism Week. In any case, Uruguay may be a small country, but they have definitely proven that they can hold their ground with lots of competitiveness. And speaking of competitiveness, I feel it's only appropriate to move on to Art with the sports part. Take it away, Art.
Speaking of little guys with a lot of enthusiasm, he just keeps going. You guys remember this guy? Legacy continues. So despite being a small country with a small population, Uruguay is extremely competitive and has shown that they can keep up with the big guys. I know, you're expecting me to get into like the whole football thing like right away, and we will get to that, but hey, let's build up to it, all right? First off, rugby, or rugby union, is actually pretty popular in Uruguay. Introduced by the British when they occupied Montevideo. Although it's been around professionally since the 1940s, it really didn't become popular until they qualified for the 1999 and 2003 Rugby World Cups, and since then they've only gotten better and better, often taking the number 1 or number 2 spot for the best team in South America. Sadly, most people didn't even realize Uruguay had a rugby team until they saw the movie Alive, which, yeah, it has nothing to do with rugby. It has a plane and they crash into the Andes and then...
It doesn't... It's an interesting movie.
Yeah. And of course, they have other sports that have a bit of popularity. They even have some Olympic medals in things like basketball, rowing, and boxing. Every single Olympics they participated in has been summer, except one time they sent one athlete to the 1988 Nagano Olympics in Japan, and it was like,
Yeah, this was a bad idea.
and they never went back to the Winter Olympics since then. As of 2023, they have racked up a total of 10 Olympic medals, 2 gold, 2 silver, and 6 bronze. And guess what the 2 gold medals were in? That's right, football. One in 1924 and 1928. That was a long time ago. That's like your grandpappy's grandpappy, right? So many poppies, you failed the drug test. And this is where things get interesting because Uruguay made the claim that these 2 gold medals in football were equivalent to World Cup wins, as they were open World Championship organized by FIFA, but before the actual first World Cup in 1930. Which, by the way, Uruguay hosted the first World Cup and subsequently won it, so that was like pretty awesome. And against, of all people, yes, Argentina. And then they won again in 1950 against Brazil. And in Brazil, as Brazil was hosting the event. So this is basically why they're allowed by FIFA to put 4 stars above their football crest. 2 for the FIFA organized Open World Championships pre-World Cup. And then the actual World Cup wins in 1930 and 1950 makes a total of 4 wins. Technically, even though the World Cup didn't exist. Just take the stars. Just take the stars. This is one reason why Uruguayans are pretty chill and never really bothered by the accomplishments of their larger neighbors. Because it's like this at the end of the day.
My country won a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, well, we hosted and won the first World Cup and technically won 4 times.
My country is thriving economically and has erased all corruption.
Yeah, well, we hosted and won the first World Cup and technically won 4 times.
Oh no, the giant squids are attacking us. They were intelligent this whole time.
Yeah, well, we hosted and won the first World Cup and technically won 4 times.
See, nothing really matters to Uruguay because they've already won something like that nobody else can claim. It's just gonna keep going, and that's fine, and they're happy with that. Oh, and a lot of you guys wanted us to mention the most popular player, Luis Suarez, and how he's like always biting people like Mike Tyson. Speaking of little guys that are confident, athletic, and like to bite things, say hello to Tarchin. Remember him? He just got groomed, so he's looking pretty good today. And that's little Uruguay there, just running around, never stopping. It's like him talking about the World Championships of 1924 and 28.
Thank you, Art. Yeah, when in doubt, just use the World Cup thing. It works like a charm every time. In any case, Uruguay's legacy goes beyond sports. I mean, you can see it everywhere from the tablados to the Teatro de Verano. There's more to the Uruguayan identity. And to talk more about the culture of Uruguay, let's bring it back to our incredibly pregnant token female co-host, Random Hannah.
Hi guys, I'm back. Next time you see me, I'll have a baby.
Oh, dang.
Let's get this done before I pop. So despite being small, Uruguay has lots of character. They've been called everything from the rebel province to the mediator nation. I mean, they do have the headquarters of Mercosur. Overall, if you ask Uruguayans, most of them will say their country is just nice and stable and have been generally drama-free since 1985. For most of their early history, Uruguay was kind of just a low-key agricultural-based nation until the Bache presidency. Fun fact, he once killed a guy in a duel that he challenged because of articles written in a newspaper he didn't like. Also, fun fact, dueling was totally legal in Uruguay up until 1992. Can you believe that? Anyway, one thing many Uruguayans have fond memories of, the tunica uniform they had to wear to school. They all had to do it. Of course, we all know about gaucho culture. Yes, Uruguay has its own version of it. They even have their own traditional clothing. As we mentioned, there are lots of cattle in Uruguay, which means leather craftwork or huascaria is also a huge part of Uruguayan culture. Basically, if you go to a souvenir shop, you will probably find leather products. Uruguayans have quite a few distinct traditions. They have the Nostalgia Night on the 24th of August, where people party to old music. You might see people playing the game Truco on the street, which uses Spanish cards without the 8s or 9s. Otherwise, Uruguay has been a hub of the arts, literature, and architectural experimentation. In cities especially like Montevideo, you can see everything from neoclassical, modern, to Art Deco. In the countryside, you have estancias, or estates, and haciendas that were used to produce leather and beef, usually in a square or rectangular pattern with an inner courtyard. One of the most famous architects, Carlos Paez Velero, made the Casa Pueblo off a hillside of the ocean. There is no short supply of visual arts in Uruguay. Just walking down the streets, you will notice mural after mural after mural. Joaquin Torres Garcia, probably the most famous artist from Uruguay, was a pioneer in the constructivism and universal constructivism movements in Latin America. So many prominent writers have come from Uruguay, like Eduardo Galeano wrote critically acclaimed thought-provoking works like The Open Veins of Latin America and Memory of Fire. Uruguay even has a few film credentials under their belt, dating way back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. From there, the Uruguayan film industry has grown and has produced critically acclaimed features like 2004's Whiskey. They even have an Oscar for Best Original Song. And to talk about the music segment of Uruguay, Keith had to gracefully step down this time because we actually have a special guest host. Some of you Latin Americans may already know her. Say hi to Uruguayan music artist Mary.
Hey everybody, how are you? This is Mary Deal. I'm a Uruguayan singer and I'm here just to say hi to Paul and to everybody who's watching Geography now. This chapter is amazing. Uruguayan music is really interesting because it has many layers in it. It's really diverse. Like for example, tango music and candombe was originated here, but Paul will tell you better about this this. I'm just here to say hi and to say thank you for this chapter. It's gonna be great. Mwah. Love you, everybody.
Yeah, that's all we could get from her because, you know, she's a pop star celebrity and she's super busy. But she gave us like 20 seconds of her time. Totally worth it. In any case, Keith, why don't you just own your segment? Let's go to Keith.
Okay, so what's up, guys? So I guess I'm going to be switching back to the music segment. I guess apparently the Uruguayan superstar princess could not participate. I guess I will gladly take over my duties that were always rightfully mine. Woo! Alrighty, I'm going to give you guys the basics today about Uruguayan music. Music is a huge part of their culture, and it has so many layers to it. You've probably heard of the tango, right? Well, it was actually invented in Uruguay, most likely. Argentinians keeps arguing with them, but it's probably Uruguayan because it has lots of elements that combine rhythms from the Uruguayan black community. It's even a UNESCO intangible heritage for Uruguay. Started in the 1800s, tango took elements from European style instruments like the guitar, piano, flute, violin, and the accordion, but added African style rhythms usually played in 2/4 or 4/4. For those of you that want to know what 2/4 is, it would be, well, you can count to 2, right? So 1, 2, 1, 2, or 4/4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. Time signatures. Wow. Some of the most famous tango musicians and singers were Uruguayan, such as these people. And one of the most famous tangos, the La Comparsita, was written by a Uruguayan. The thing is, tango would be nothing if it wasn't for one of Uruguay's most prized music styles, candombe.
Let's just give it to him.
It originated from the Afro-Uruguayan community, mostly using drums performed by groups called cuerdas. The rhythm is also used for milonga and murga music, which are dances and theater styles often performed at Carnival. And speaking of which, Uruguay has disputedly the longest Carnival celebration on earth, lasting somewhere around 40 days. We cannot talk about Uruguayan music without mentioning payada, the traditional gaucho music. It's like a rap battle where each performer has to make up their own verses and respond to the other verses. It can go on for hours, and the loser is the one that cannot respond. And finally, of course, how can we forget about all the metal bands? Although I might not be wearing their shirt right now, but 2 of the members of Opeth, well, 1 remaining member, misinterpreting this, but I believe Martins Mendez and the drummer, I forget his name, but either way, those dudes. Anyways, that's it for me, guys. I love everybody. Thanks for coming to the music segment. Woo!
Thank you, Mary and Keith. So there you go. I hope you're starting to really get a feel of Uruguay and how it's a distinct nation. And what better way to end this episode than talking about how the rest of the world sees Uruguay. Let's close off this episode with... So as a buffer state, Uruguay has kind of had to play the chill guy since its inception as a nation. They are members of numerous IGOs like these, probably the biggest one being Mercosur. They were a founding member. And today they hold official diplomatic relations with over 170 countries with 53 embassies and 141 consulates abroad. Big deal for a small country. In any case, first off, abroad in Asia, China has become Uruguay's largest trading partner since 2016 when they established a free trade agreement. And since then, they've enjoyed a cordial relationship with numerous diplomatic visits from political dignitaries. Armenia has a close link to Uruguay as they have a noticeable Armenian diaspora community. In Africa, they are involved in the UN's MONUSCO mission in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. In Europe, they have close ties to the EU, specifically Italy, France, and Spain. Each country is a part of the Latin Union. They have signed numerous bilateral agreements. About half of the entire population of Uruguay claims Italian descent, and many people even have dual citizenship between Uruguay and Italy. Spain, being the former colonial head, still holds a close connection to Uruguay since 1870 when they signed the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. The king has made 3 high-profile visits, bringing it closer to home. Generally, they do well in Latin America. Paraguay is the only country they kind of have had some kind of beef with in the past as they fought against them in the Paraguayan War. Nonetheless, today they are cool with each other. The USA is one of the largest investors in Uruguay as they have signed the Bilateral Investment Treaty of 2006, and today they also share a free trade agreement as part of the FTAA. Brazil is close to them as well. They will jokingly call Uruguay Cisplatina. Both share common historical and cultural traits, and in 1991 they signed the Treaty of Asuncion, which marked the beginning of a period that would join the two in their political, economic, and diplomatic closeness. When it comes to their best friends, however, most Uruguayans, regardless of whatever degree of opinions they have on them, will probably say Argentina. There's not even really much of a noticeable duality in the social dynamics between the two countries. Argentinians and Uruguayans are essentially one people, or at least the Rio Platense Argentinian peoples and Uruguay. Can't really say too much for places like Patagonia or Catamarca, but whatever. Nobody understands Argentinians better than Uruguayans and vice versa. The two have spent pretty much every moment of their histories side by side. Argentina has supported Uruguay in almost every single major conflict they've had. The only time they had a little bit of tension was when Uruguay decided to build up pulp mills on the Uruguay River, which prompted Argentine backlash for potential river pollution. But it's all friendly, and in the end, Argentina is still proud when a nation 16 times smaller than them holds their ground and can keep up with them. The two go hand in hand, and they will always overall know that they have someone that gets them, and they'll always love each other. In conclusion, Uruguay may have been created, developed, and grown under unusual geopolitical circumstances, yet despite being small with a small population, they have proven over and over again that they are not only their own unique people, but they can hold their ground with the giants that surround them. Cheers, Uruguay. Stay tuned, Uzbekistan is coming up next. Ooh, Uzbekistan.